Can Purdue bounce back during today's Mackey home opener? Find out right now.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your host. I am Nick Arvin. We have a fun Wednesday episode of Locked On Boilermakers coming your way today. Of course, today is the opener at Mackey. It's not going to count, but the doors have opened at Mackey Arena. And today, Purdue, they will take host to UIndy, the D2 squad that doesn't have to travel too far for this exhibition game. Purdue hasn't lost an exhibition at Mackey since 2002 against the Harlem Globetrotters of all teams, funny enough. So take with that what you will. But UIndy, a D2 team coming into Mackey, coming in to West Lafayette. And for Purdue, coming off a tough loss in an exhibition against Kentucky this past weekend, it's an opportunity for you to really bounce back against an inferior opponent. You're not expecting for UIndy to come into Mackey and to give much of a fight. So really for Purdue in this one, you want to show your strength. You want to show that you deserve to be the preseason number one. And I think that Purdue will be able to take advantage of a lot of things that UIndy will do. So let's go ahead and get right into that today. Let's talk about UIndy, who they are, that program, D2 program, like I said. But they're in the GLVC D2 conference. They're about a mid-tier program inside of that conference. They were ranked 6th in that preseason poll. That's out of 15 teams. So that kind of just goes to show that that is a mid-tier program in terms of their conference, where they're at. They bring in head coach Scott Heedy, who it's his second year for the Hounds. Last year, the team finished at 9-11 on the season, so not the best year, and they fell short of making their own conference tournament. Like I said, not the best year, but for a first-year head coach and Scott Heedy, I mean, you do what you can, right? He took his other team. I don't remember off my head what team he brought in. Just to preface this episode, yes, I did a lot of research on UIndy for this, but I don't know everything because I don't watch UIndy basketball consistently. So I hope I can still do my best. If you are a UIndy fan out there, please don't get on to me too much if I mess up a little bit in terms of replicating what this program, where they're at, what they mean, and what they're trying to do. But like I said, Scott Heedy, he comes in second year of the program, and they're trying to improve this year. They've got several guys that they're really relying on to be good for them this year. And first of all, that's graduate student Noah Khan. Noah, he was pretty good. 6'1" guard. He was at UIndy for the Greyhounds last year. Had a couple solid games where he was in double figures, but ultimately injuries kind of derailed his season. But Noah Khan is a name that I think that we're going to hear quite a lot because he leads their offense, much like UIndy's Braden Smith, so to speak. Like I said, a small guard at 6'1", 190 points. Last year, he averaged 7 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds. This year, he's going to have a much bigger role for the Greyhounds, really performing at that point guard position, being the leader of this offense. So that's somebody that the Greyhounds are going to want to see succeed is Noah Khan. And going up against Braden Smith, I think that's the matchup. Obviously, when you have a National Player of the Year going up against a D2 guy, it's kind of easy to tell who's going to be a little bit better. But in terms of his opponents, his peers, the conference that he plays in, Noah Khan is a very good point guard for the D2 level. So that's going to be a fun matchup to look at. Someone else that UIndy brings in is their sophomore, Kelvin Amako. He's going to be solid. He's their center. He's going to battle up against Oscar Cluff, who is someone that I think is going to be incredibly important. We'll talk about him in our last segment today after a tough exhibition against Kentucky. I think Oscar Cluff is really going to need to show that he can battle up against Kelvin Amako. He's one of their best returners on the year. And once again, he's going to plug in, have a bigger role for the Greyhounds this year as he starts at that center position. He is 6'11", 255 pounds. So a lot of similarities to Cluff in terms of that size. Cluff is a little bit bigger in terms of being stronger, but I believe that they're both 6'11". That's going to be a matchup to look out for. Amako, Cluff. I really want to see Cluff get involved. Like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's a matchup. That's a matchup to look out for. And then one more guy that I want to hit on that's going to be really important for UIndy this year is another graduate student. He is Pierce Thomas. Now, Pierce, he comes from Brownsburg, Indiana. Of course, a lot of people from the Indiana area know where that's at. Graduate student, 6'5". He's a guard. He's going to be a bit of a swing guard for UIndy. He can play the two guard, can play the small forward position, but overall, they view this guy as their best player. He was a 4-star recruit in 2021. He averaged 7.8 points, about 2 assists and 4 rebounds. He originally committed to Butler out of high school, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And that's kind of why he's at UIndy. Last year, he started 6 games at the start of the year and then suffered a season-ending injury that really costed him his season. And this year, he's going to want to see a lot more production. So I expect for UIndy, they're going to want to get Thomas involved, and they're going to want to get him involved early. They view him as their best player, and I think it'll be very interesting to see who guards Pierce Thomas, because that's something that we talked a lot about whenever Purdue faced off against Otega Owe, trying to find a guy to guard that 2 or that 3 spot, whether that be CJ Cox, who was announced as the starter, but Gicarri Harris has really showed up and shown that he is worthy of getting minutes. He is Purdue's essentially their 6th starter right now in terms of coming right in, playing a lot of minutes, and really being Purdue's best defender when he's on the floor from that 3 spot. So I think that Gicarri Harris, his ability to match up with Pierce Thomas, UIndy, their ability to get Thomas involved, and hopefully for Thomas and for UIndy, he's able to stay healthy, because that's a very talented athlete. And like I said, unfortunately, injuries have derailed a lot of his collegiate career. A graduate student, wishing the best for that guy, and we're definitely going to see him today against Purdue. I can't hardly wait. And I just want to say how excited I am that basketball is back in Mackey Arena. Purdue, historically, they've been great in Mackey. Everybody knows that Purdue, they've got the hot hand in Mackey, and they've got all the momentum. I want to see Purdue shoot the ball at a much better rate against UIndy. I know that against Kentucky, Purdue struggled to shoot the ball, and we can attribute that to being away, just being the first game of the year, jitters, whatever. But against an inferior opponent in UIndy, a D2 school at home in Mackey, I know it's an exhibition game, but before Evansville, I feel like you need to prove that you can shoot the 3 ball at an elite level, because that's where this team is going to be at their best. And shooting 17% is absolutely unacceptable. UIndy, they're going to give you the opportunities to shoot the 3 ball. They're not going to pressure you the way that other teams, maybe a Kentucky even did, because they just don't have the guys. They don't have the amount of intensity. And that's okay. They're a D school. That's why you run an exhibition against them for a reason, because it's a tune-up game, but you want to see success against UIndy. This isn't a game where you can just kind of come out flat and not show up, because you got to show that you're the number 1 team in the nation. You didn't show it against Kentucky, and you can have the benefit of the doubt, because Purdue, they have lost 3 straight exhibitions. But like I said, Purdue, they haven't lost one at home since the Globetrotters in 2002. So Purdue, they need to come into this one. They need to come in with a high level of intensity. I don't care if it's UIndy. I want them to play like they want to be there, like they understand how important this matchup is. Because although it's an exhibition, although it's against a D2 school, you're the number 1 team in the nation. And it's important that you prove it. It's important that you show up with that high level intensity, ready to show the Greyhounds that you are the team to beat. Show the entire nation that the Purdue Boilermakers are the number 1 team in the nation. And it starts in Purdue's last exhibition, the start of basketball at Mackey tonight against the UIndy Greyhounds. We'll talk about Purdue, how they can find success against this team. Stick with us. That's here next. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. They deliver confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every single model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. We talked about it in our last segment, how Purdue needs to use tonight at Mackey as an opportunity to really bounce back, to show that this is the number one team in the nation. But how does Purdue go about doing that? Against UIndy, we talked the matchups in our last segment. We talked about what UIndy brings into this matchup. How can Purdue exploit that? How can they find success? And how can they blow this team out of the water? Because that should be the expectation for this game. Well, I think it just starts out with a level of confidence. I never really felt like against Kentucky that Purdue showed the level of confidence that they should have. They didn't go into that matchup with the mindset of being the number one team. I feel like you have to take it seriously. You have to have that kind of identity that we are that number one team, and we're going to have the right amount of intensity going into this matchup. I think that that was something that was missing against Kentucky. And at home, I think that that energy level absolutely needs to be there. I know it's an exhibition, but you're less than a week away from the real thing at home against Evansville. So now is the time to get ready. Now is the time to practice how you play. This exhibition isn't the time to take this as a joke, because you play a team in Evansville that they're going to be better than UIndy. You need to take this one seriously, and you need to get ready for next week, because the college basketball season is here, and a lack of intensity is going to get you beat. So that's the first thing for Purdue. I want them to be focused. I want them to be intense, and I want them to play within their identity that we are the number one team in the nation and that nobody can beat us. The second thing, we talked about it all week long, and we're going to continue to talk about it, because it's incredibly important that Trey Kaufman-Renn finds some comfort next to Oscar Cluff. That's going to be huge. And TKR, his ability to stay consistent, albeit in his last game, he struggled a little bit. That floater didn't go early. He certainly picked it up en route to being Purdue's leading scorer of the day. But throughout a lot of that game, especially early on, TKR, he seemed uncomfortable. He seemed like he wasn't used to running that lineup alongside Cluff, and it definitely showed in terms of Purdue's production, in terms of getting up and down the court. So that's something I want to see, whether that be alongside Oscar Cluff, whether it be alongside Jacobsen. TKR, it's going to be very important for him this year that he's going to be able to play alongside his role next to another big. That's going to be something that's going to guarantee Purdue success this year. And if you're not comfortable with that, if TKR can't find success early and ride that momentum, then Purdue, they're going to struggle. So I think against UIndy, against a team that's not going to be as fast as teams you play this year, take that opportunity to really get this figured out. It's going to be a better opportunity playing against another team than you're going to have playing against your own team, but still another team where you can test yourself, where you can put that rotation in and get TKR comfortable alongside other bigs, playing in that offense and transferring that over to the defensive side of the ball, because that's going to be big for Purdue starting up this season, playing against stronger, faster teams. We talked about shooting in the last segment. I want to bring it up again because it's not as important at home. And that's true. Purdue, they factually shoot the ball much better at home in Mackey. Most teams do. Most teams shoot the ball better at home. So this isn't as big of a thing for a home exhibition, but in general, I feel like Purdue, they just need to find a level of consistency within that lineup. They need to find a level of consistency shooting the ball, because that's where Purdue is going to be their best at. this year. If they struggle shooting the ball, well, they're going to struggle. And that's going to lead me into my next point. You can struggle shooting the ball if you can rebound the ball, because it guarantees you more possessions. And this kind of goes back to both of my points. It all goes in together. TKR and his comfort alongside Oscar Cluff and then shooting the ball, it plays in together, because if you can't rebound, well, you can't win games. You can afford to miss shots if you can rebound the ball. And against Kentucky, that wasn't the case. Last year, it wasn't the case. And that's why you bring in these bigs this year. That's why you get Daniel Jacobsen healthy, because you want to have a better interior presence. You want to be able to afford to miss shots at times, because you want to regain possessions. And against Kentucky, not only did they lose in fast break points, well, they also lost the rebounding numbers. You can't win games this way. You got to have it one way or the other. You can't lose in the fast break and lose rebounding numbers. Against UIndy, I want to see Purdue win both of those numbers. Yes, Purdue, they're not going to be the most fast break centric team this year. They're not the fastest team in the nation, but against a team like UIndy, you should certainly be getting breaks. You should be getting the ball in transition, and you should have opportunities to score with that against a team like UIndy. When you have the guy that was deemed as the best rebounder in the portal, you should have better rebounding numbers. So against UIndy, I want to see you win within those margins. I want to see you have opportunities to really step up, out rebound this team, play better in the fast break. And then that leads me to my last point. What I want to see Purdue do against UIndy. I want to see this bench unit come up big, because that's going to be huge for Purdue, and that can't be understated enough. We know about the big three. We know about Braden Smith. We know about Fletcher Lawyer, and we know about TKR. And we can talk all day long about how important those guys are going to be for Purdue this year. But I would argue that almost, if not just as important for Purdue, is going to be this bench unit, the ability for this depth to really step up and to play plus minutes when it matters, because that's how you win in March. That's how you find success as a college basketball team, because it's a long season. It's a long tournament. The ability for things to happen, for guys to get hurt, and for other people to step in and find success, well, that's going to be the biggest attribute to finding success along that long period of the college basketball season. Right now, Purdue, they've got a good thing going. Like I said, with about 6 starters, you got CJ Cox and then Gicarri Harris, who comes off the bench. That's something great that you've got going for you. But whenever Braden Smith isn't on the floor, when TKR aren't on the floor, and both those guys aren't going to be off the floor at the same time often. But when we saw it against Kentucky, and when Braden Smith in general was off the floor, that bench unit absolutely struggled. They looked not functional. And for a team that preaches depth, that their best benefit, their most advantageous spot this year, we thought was going to be their depth, it certainly didn't show against Kentucky, as they got outscored by a pretty big amount in the bench numbers. So against UIndy, you have more depth than them. You are a D1 program. You're the number 1 program in the nation going up against a D2 program. There is no reason that you should not be outscoring their bench. So I feel like that's kind of a non-negotiable for Purdue in this one. Your bench unit has got to outscore UIndy, and they're going to have a lot of opportunities. Guys like Antoine West is going to be able to prove that he deserves to play this year. He shouldn't get redshirted. Guys like Liam Murphy, he's going to prove that he deserves spots in that rotation. Jack Benner is trying to prove that he belongs in that rotation. There's so many guys on that bench that right now they need to show up against UIndy in a really big way in order to kind of give themselves a spot on this team, to give themselves a big role. There are plenty of guys that we could go over in that position right now. So show up tonight. Show up against UIndy. Show Coach Matt Painter that you deserve to play this year. Show Coach that you have an opportunity to play in meaningful games and to be productive. Because, I mean, against Kentucky, not as many guys as I hoped would show that. I apologize. Let me rephrase that. Against Kentucky, not as many guys showed that as they should have. And that's something against a much inferior opponent you need to show up. Those guys on the bottom fighting for spots in the rotation, fighting to not redshirt, need to show up. And that bench number in terms of points scored needs to reflect that. I want to see this bench unit start to get comfortable because it's going to be huge for Purdue this year. We'll talk about some guys that are going to be huge for Purdue this year and some people to look out for in this game tonight against UIndy. We're talking that here next. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love how Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching and actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. So let yourself run, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. So when thinking about a player to watch for Purdue in this matchup, my thought process behind this was we need to think about a guy that didn't perform against Kentucky, a guy that has an opportunity against UIndy to really show up and to make up for the performance over the last weekend. And I thought the choice was definitely obvious, and I'll get to that in just a second. However, when thinking about that, when using that kind of thought process, there were plenty of guys that popped up. So I don't feel like it's fair to just talk about one. I thought about 2 or 3 different guys I want to talk about as we end off the show today that are going to be must watch. If you're a Purdue fan trying to find guys that need to really show up in this exhibition, the guy that I did have in mind for this segment, though, I feel like there's no arguing this one. It is Oscar Cluff. Oscar Cluff is the guy to watch in this matchup. Against Kentucky, he struggled big time. He only had 1 point on 1 shot, didn't make the shot, had a free throw, only 5 total rebounds. He was out-rebounded by Kentucky, by Diabonte, by 4 rebounds. Colin Chandler of Kentucky had the same amount of rebounds. And honestly, Oscar Cluff, he just didn't really show what we were hoping he would show against Kentucky in terms of being that big man that Purdue was really searching for this year, in terms of rebounding the ball, being the best rebounder on the floor, in terms of getting it done at the pick and roll. Oscar Cluff wasn't that guy against Kentucky, and he needs to show that he's going to be that guy against UIndy. He needs to have a big night tonight. I want to see him get a double-double, to be honest. That's what I want from Oscar Cluff, is that double-double he averaged last year. I know that you don't necessarily need him to get it done on the offensive side of the ball because you have so many people, but not rebounding, not getting a single offensive rebound, that's a non-negotiable. Oscar Cluff has got to be better, and that's why he's going to be the player to watch for Purdue in this matchup against UIndy. Because honestly, I think that this team goes as far as Oscar Cluff goes, because that's what Purdue ran into last year. It's a lot of the same pieces, but they didn't have that center. And if Oscar Cluff can't be a center for this team, well, Purdue will have to look elsewhere. And that's kind of to my next point, is that Daniel Jacobsen should be another player to watch. And that's right in with Oscar Cluff, because Daniel Jacobsen had a much better performance, in my opinion, especially from an offensive perspective, than Cluff did against Kentucky. Jacobsen, he had 9 points, was 4 of 5 from the field. He had 5 rebounds, and he had a block in that matchup, which is where I think that Jacobsen is better than Oscar Cluff, much better as a defender inside, as a shot blocker. But if Daniel Jacobsen is able to rebound the ball as well as Oscar Cluff, if he's better to be a better shot blocker, and if he's able to be better offensively, then why is Oscar Cluff starting, right? What is his value if Daniel Jacobsen is outplaying him? He outplayed him against Kentucky, flat out. So that's going to be big. That's going to be something to watch, because going into summer, going into fall, it was pretty much seen as Oscar Cluff's job, and that was certain that he would be the starter. But like I said, if Daniel Jacobsen continues to outplay him, if Jacobsen continues to show that he has value on the court and Cluff struggles, well, I think that there may need to be conversations had. And that brings me to my next point, because there's two other guys that are in a very similar position. Someone that needs to be watched in this matchup is CJ Cox. CJ Cox struggled against Kentucky. He only had 2 points. And Gicarri Harris, I thought, played really, really good. Gicarri, he only had 5 points, but only played 14 minutes. He was 2 for 2, had that and one basket. And I thought that Gicarri Harris looked really good on the defensive side of the ball. So if you're CJ Cox and you only have 2 points, you have to prove yourself, because Gicarri Harris, he's looking like he's not going to be told no in terms of trying to earn that starting position. He's making himself too valuable to not start. And we can talk about how nice it is to have 6 bona fide starters on this lineup. But back to the Cluff thing, it just doesn't make sense to start CJ Cox over Gicarri Harris if Harris is going to provide more production. So against UIndy, you were given the benefit of the doubt. We saw what you did against Alabama last year. We know that Cox can be a good player and play great alongside Braden Smith, but you need to prove, if you're CJ, that you have more value being on the court than Gicarri Harris, because that wasn't shown. That wasn't shown last Friday, and it needs to be shown for CJ tonight against UIndy. I think that this team will be the best when both of those guys are firing on all cylinders. But CJ Cox, he didn't look good, and Gicarri Harris looked great. So CJ Cox is going to be a guy to look out for. And then the last person that I want to talk about before we wrap up this show is Antoine West Jr. I brought him up. I talked a little bit about it earlier in the show, but it needs to be said again. He didn't play good against Kentucky. He was only in for 4 minutes, but got beat every time defensively. He didn't show that he was ready, remotely ready as a defender to play meaningful minutes for this team this year. So he needs to prove it against UIndy. He really needs to get in, and he needs to play some meaningful minutes. He needs to show up on the defensive side, most importantly, and he needs to make a couple shots, show that you deserve to not get that red shirt this year, because you weren't red shirted yet. But I think that's a conversation that needs to be had. If West can't show that he has any ability to produce against teams this year, if he can't show that, then I don't feel like you can say that there's no benefit to redshirting him, because against Kentucky, it was pretty obvious that that guy isn't ready. I'm not saying that he is or he isn't, but he did not look ready against Kentucky. And if you're Antoine West, you have an opportunity tonight against UIndy to prove that you should play this year. But we're going to see. We'll recap that game tomorrow. We'll talk about it. So make sure to tune in tomorrow. We'll have that post game. But of course, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys are just now watching us, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. It helps us out a ton as we continue to bring you guys daily content here on Locked On Boilermakers. I appreciate you guys making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big Ten. Craig Sheeman breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thank you guys. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.